All right, let's come back now to France. And what says Paris more than the Eiffel Tower? At the very mention of the word Paris, you get an image of that infamous Iron Lady. And the Eiffel Tower has become an icon, of course, of the City of Light. And so to find out a bit more about it, we decided to bring in our favorite historian, Inge Laino. Hi, Inge.
Hi, Jeannie.
You are also the director of Paris Muse. Paris Muse,
Indeed.
of course, a group of docents and family educators who lead private tours around Paris. It's great to see you. Now, refresh our minds, first of all, a bit about the history of the Eiffel Tower.
Right. So the Eiffel Tower was built in 1889 for the World's Fair. So this is one of the years that the World's Fair will be held in Paris. But 1889 also happens to mark the centenary of the French Revolution. So the Eiffel Tower commemorates that important event in French history. And the World's Fair provided the perfect opportunity for France to show off its progress in industry and technology. So Gustave Eiffel was commissioned to build something spectacular to be the entrance to the World's Fair on the Champ de Mars. And he comes up with this pretty incredible tower made of wrought iron latticework. It stands at 324 meters tall. That's just over 1,000 feet. And at the time, it was actually the tallest man-made structure in the world, a title that it held for 40 years before it was surpassed by the Chrysler Building in New York City.
Now, if my French history serves me right, people didn't really like the Eiffel Tower in the beginning.
It's hard to believe, but indeed it was, in fact, very controversial in the beginning. And believe it or not, there was actually a petition that circulated called Artists Against the Eiffel Tower. All sorts of French artists were signing it in the name of slighted French taste. They were calling Eiffel's Tower useless and monstrous. And there's a funny story about a French writer, Guy de Maupassant, who apparently hated the tower so much that he sat under it to have lunch every day because it was the only place he could go where he didn't have to look at its atrocious silhouette.
So was it useless? Does it have any other purpose other than being there?
Well, at the time, its sole purpose was actually to wow visitors to the World's Fair. And it was meant to be temporary, I should mention. The whole thing was actually supposed to come down after 20 years. It's hard to imagine Paris without the Eiffel Tower, isn't it? But later, it was put to more practical use to transmit radio and television broadcasts. So it did eventually become a vital communications link. And today, I would argue that the Eiffel Tower's main purpose is to wow visitors to Paris with images of itself, sometimes even sparkling in the night, and also offering them these spectacular panoramic views of the city.
Now, there are secrets to the Eiffel Tower that perhaps just an average visitor might not recognize at first.
That is true. If you look closely at the first level, just above where the curved legs come together, there's actually a band of 72 names in big gold letters, the names of men whom Eiffel wanted to immortalize on his tower.
So who are some of these people?
Well, they're men who made important contributions to learning, whether it be sciences or industry or technology. Now, in the past, buildings and monuments in France showcased royalty or aristocracy. So, for example, if you've ever been to the Louvre, the former royal palace, you'll see the monograms of the kings who passed through there everywhere. You've got Henry's H, Louis's L, and of course, later on, Napoleon's N. Or if you've ever walked through the Marais district, a beautiful, charming neighborhood in Paris, you have these beautiful old aristocratic townhouses with the crests of the aristocrats who used to live there. So, in other words, something very different is going on with Eiffel's Tower, right? It celebrates 100 years of the French Republic. And so it really embodies the values of that republic, which celebrated individual achievement over social rank or birthright. So the men on Eiffel's Tower are not there because of who they were, but because of what they did. Or in other words, a meritocracy replaced an aristocracy.
And what about these names? Is it anyone that we would still recognize today?
So they're not exactly household names, but perhaps they should be. Let's look at just a few. We've got, for example, Lavoisier, who's the father of modern chemistry. He invented the periodic table, which I, for one, had a very hard time learning in high school.
You're not alone.
That's a sad but true story. We've also got Fourier, who argued for the existence of the greenhouse effect, which is something that we're still talking a lot about today. Or how about Daguerre, one of the fathers of photography? Now, there is one name that I think might ring a bell for a lot of people, Foucault, of the famous Foucault's pendulum, which was an instrument that was used to demonstrate the effect of the Earth's rotation.
And which you can see in the Pantheon, I believe.
I do believe so, or somewhere in Paris.
What about Eiffel himself? Did he put his own name up there?
So his name is not up there, but of course we know the tower by his name, and he is most famous for it. And I would even argue that this is probably one of the most, if not the most recognizable monuments in the world. But Eiffel did also contribute to another very famous monument, There she is, the Statue of Liberty in New York City. She stands in New York Harbor. Eiffel collaborated on the inner framework, the skeleton, if you will, of Lady Liberty. So, and also I may also remind you that the Statue of Liberty was a gift from France to the United States to celebrate the 100 years of the American Revolution. So these two monuments have quite a bit in common. The Eiffel Tower here in Paris and the Statue of Liberty in New York. I like to think of them as sisters in a way.
Inge, I just want to get back to these 72 names. You kept saying men, so I'm taking that there's no woman's name up there.
You are
on
correct.
The Eiffel Tower.
Alas, Eiffel 72 is indeed an all-boys club. There is not the name of a single woman up there, although some argue that Eiffel actually owed a lot of the advances that made his tower possible to a woman, namely Sophie Germain. Germain is credited with having developed the theory of elasticity, which apparently was crucial to the calculations that Eiffel had to make for the construction of his tower. So even though the Eiffel Tower is, of course, a symbol of modernity, it's still very much the product of a 19th century that had a ways to go still in terms of progress.
All right, Inge, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Inge
Jeannie.
Laino, the director of Paris Muse. Always so interesting to have you on the show.
Thanks, Jeannie. A
Don't
pleasure.
forget, if you want to get more information about Paris Muse or any of their tours, you can always check it out on their website at parismuse.com.